fantastic. We're so glad you're here, and I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Robin. Really appreciate it. And great to meet a lot of you. I know I've interacted with several of the Tech Mom cohorts, but some of you are new faces. So great to see you today. I know we've got quite a small group, so let's really keep this as catered to you as we can. I'll share my slides actually in the chat so that y'all can follow along. And then I also have a little practice sheet that we'll be using that's just a Google Doc that I also dropped in the chat. So you can go ahead and just make a copy of that now, and we'll be using it at different points in the discussion today. So thank you again, Robin, for the great introduction. I truly love Tech Moms and what y'all are doing. So I feel like I learn as much from these workshops, if not more, than you could possibly learn from me. So we'll go ahead and jump into this topic around professional communication. Let me, actually, I'm going to do this the prettier way so you don't have to see all my ugly notes. Like Robin said, this is kind of what I do for a living. And I don't always think about the really tactical stuff, but I've tried to give you some really tactical takeaways for today. So before we jump in, would love to know why you're here and what it is you're hoping to get out of this discussion. So if you wouldn't mind just dropping in the chat, and I'll make sure that I've got that pulled up so that I can see what you share. Just kind of what you're hoping to get out of this conversation. So I can see your names, so you don't need to worry about posting that there. But if you would just in the chat share one sentence, one or two things that you're hoping to get out of the discussion today. Yeah, Robin says more effective communication in any part of our lives, right? Yeah, what else? Advocating for ourselves. Yeah, Lucy, that's a good one. Especially as women, sometimes it's easier for us to advocate for others than for ourselves. So I think that's a great tool to add to communication. Lynette, communicating with others, anything will help me. Bethany, how to be efficient and specific and eliminating the back and forth. Absolutely. Let's get to the point. Let's clear up any ambiguity. Natalie, college senior, graduating this year. Congrats. Any tips or information on how to properly communicate in the workplace? All of it. Perfect. And then Stephanie, better communication for tech sales. Love those examples. Perfect. Feel free to engage in the chat more as we talk today. And then again, since we all are a small group, if at any point you have a question, you're welcome to just unmute and we'll talk through that. So doing some introductions currently. I'll introduce myself a little bit as well. And then we'll talk through some high-level communication strategies that can really be applied across business, and then really hone in on some of the channels that are referenced in that practice sheet. So again, if you didn't get that, you're welcome to click directly in the slides, or you can see it right here. But we're going to be talking through some of these formats: emails, Slack text, presentation, LinkedIn, resume. What are some of the expectations for comms in those specific channels, and how can we improve them? And then, yes, Robin, how to talk to coworkers or bosses differently than I would with friends. So this is where I'll probably ask for Robin's perspective too, because the honest truth is I love to lean into authentic communication. And I think you really should be yourself and don't feel like you need to censor yourself at work. Now, what version of yourself do you bring to work, right? There might be the more polished version. There might be the ones that you are with family and friends. You can still be true to your authentic self while choosing the language that is appropriate for the setting at hand. When it comes to language and grammar, I do truly believe that we should use the language that fits the setting, right? We as human beings choose the language that we use. So let's choose it intentionally so that communication is more effective and clear. Awesome. Intro to who I am. Robin already told you a lot, but I am that goofy 9-month pregnant teacher in the back of this picture. Before I even started in marketing, I taught high school and truly loved it. It was a calling of mine. But you'll see that a lot of a lot of the strategies that I share today actually stem from my time in teaching English. I've found that in tech, I'm able to use those same skills, leverage that storytelling, relationship building really effectively. And I truly believe that that ability to communicate clearly is why I have had success in my role. So it's what I do, right? But having that confidence and clarity is really critical. So let's talk through some of these kind of high-level communication strategies. And I'm kind of going to speed through this first part because I want us to get into the really tactical stuff. But if at any point you want to spend more time on slides or have a question, please just let me know. So this is probably the number one reason that I found success transitioning from a teaching role into a marketing role. It's because I believe in mentor texts. Now, what is a mentor text? It's something that models what good writers or good communicators do in that channel or in that format. So if you want to write a book, the best way to see what good writers do is go read a book, right? Go read a good book. For me, when I had to write my first press release, something I had never done before, I went and looked up a ton of press releases and I picked the things that I liked and I left out the things that I didn't like. When it came time to lead meetings and to be a manager, I'm still using mentor text. They just look different. They might be people instead of writing. And I'm trying to copy the things that they do really well while still letting myself be true. So focus on the true mentors, focus on the greats. One of my favorite mentors and one that I actually used in college was Ernest Hemingway. I love his style of writing because it is very short. It is, well, I'll use the word clear, but maybe some of you would disagree. It gets to the point. And the important thing is that there's no fluff, right? And so when it comes to technical writing, professional writing, we really do want to eliminate the fluff. So this screenshot comes from the Hemingway app. I'll actually give you a little preview, but it's kind of fun because it helps you to omit some of these qualifiers, right? Don't hedge, just get rid of it, right? Use a more forceful verb here, get rid of active voice. So when you're looking for really clear recommendations, you can use this app, plug in your writing, and it will help you to use that mentor text to clarify. Another tool that I would recommend is Grammarly. If you're not already using it, there is a free Chrome extension. You can create an account for free too. And even though I am a writer and editor by trade, I use this every single day because it will just show up no matter where you're writing, whether you're posting on LinkedIn, whether you're writing an email, whether you're writing a blog post or working on your resume, it will pop up with these little suggestions. Grammar suggestions, right? So instead of saying our team has less projects this quarter, that word should be fewer, right? Not everybody knows that. And so being able to have this third party jump in and help is really huge. So those are some of the things I use for mentor text. But like I said, it's really about looking at a model, trying to recreate that in your own work. The second high-level communication strategy I want to touch on is the idea that clarity is kindness. This is something that the universe has been teaching me time and time again, that if I can just be clear about what I want or what I'm asking for, then I will actually be more kind about it. Sometimes I think we're hesitant to ask for what we really want because we're worried that that's going to come across as selfish, or we're worried that's going to come across as aggressive, when in reality, if you're saying what I need is for you to send me that project by end of day tomorrow, that is more kind than saying, I need that project as soon as possible. And then end of day tomorrow, hounding that person for not getting it in when you expected it because you didn't communicate clearly. So good grammar, like we mentioned, really can help to clear up some of these miscommunications. This is a tiny example, but if somebody doesn't understand the way you're using that word, right, it can actually communicate the wrong thing. So using good grammar is critical. Also, being really concise helps us to avoid losing our meaning. So again, in this example here, that red sentence is way too long. It is kind of spinning in circles here. And if we can just shorten it down to maybe 10 to 12 words, make sure that we're focusing on what we really want to say, then it helps our writing to be more clear and concise. Any thoughts at this point or any questions on these high-level principles? Okay, we'll keep moving through. A few tactical examples here, okay? Looking at the words that we're using, many is a somewhat ambiguous term. If you're saying that I need many copies, that's not a kind way to ask for something, right? Instead, be clear, I need 100 copies. that's what I need. And that's what you're going to provide for me. Let's meet early tomorrow. If you're asking somebody to have a coffee meetup with you and you're saying, hey, let's meet early, there's going to be more back and forth. Sure, I can meet early. What time works for you? Oh, 9:30 works for me. Actually, I have a meeting at that time, but I can do 10, right? If we want to eliminate the back and forth, then let's be clear. Can you meet at 8 a.m. tomorrow? If they can't, then they'll respond and suggest an alternate time, right? So let's make sure we're eliminating the ambiguous language and being more specific. Most men don't get parental leave. Well, 89% of men don't get parental leave. How much more meaningful is that and impactful is that specific data point versus the ambiguous most? Like I mentioned, send over soon is not helpful when you really need it by end of day tomorrow. And then the last example is a little bit longer, but related to giving feedback. And again, probably the lesson I'm learning often is that if you just tell someone like, hey, that upset me, or your behavior is problematic, they're not able to change their behavior because you didn't give them a specific example. So instead of waiting for them to ask, be proactive. So instead, I, as a leader, will say, when you interrupted your coworker and you said, Ria, you don't know what you're talking about, that was inappropriate behavior because it showed you have less respect for women and junior employees on our team. So giving that really clear feedback is way better than saying something ambiguous like your behavior is problematic. So just a few examples. And then I did want to show you this video from Girl Boss that I think frames it really well in the way that we as women.
This is one of the biggest ways I overcame people pleasing. Instead of trying to read everybody's mind, make everybody happy, manage other people's experiences, instead, I just ask myself, am I being considerate? Am I being clear? By considerate, I mean, was I kind? Was I willing to be flexible? Did I consider their circumstances? And then was I clear? Did I say what I meant? A majority of tension is the result of unclear expectations. So don't be afraid to be clear and say what you mean. You are responsible for being considerate, being clear. You are not responsible for how they respond to whatever it is you give them. But just like you're responsible for those two things, they're also responsible for those two things. They're also responsible for responding to you in a clear and considerate way. And a lot of fully grown adults don't do that in return. You're not there to manage everyone's experience. You're not there to make everyone happy. You're not there to read everyone's mind. All you have to do is be clear and considerate.
I love the way she frames that. Again, acknowledging not all fully grown adults can do this, and how much will this make you stand out as an employee, as an applicant, as an interviewer, as a manager. If you can be clear, considerate, then that will send the message that not only is communication important to you, but you will lead from a place of empathy and kindness. I do want to add here, kind is also kind. So clarity is critical here in communication, but just being, like she said, considerate about other people's feelings is a really big part of empathetic communication. So one recommendation I want to give you is to strive for inclusive language. I've included some resources in the slide deck of some of my favorite places to access the latest advice for using this inclusive language, because in the writing space, it's important to me to get this right and to help my team to get it right. But a few examples, let's switch chairman for chairperson, right? Easy to do, makes the conversation more inclusive. Stewardess is kind of an antiquated gender term. So how can we change that to just say flight attendant? Working moms, can we address working parents as a whole? Acknowledge that some of the challenges are the same there. And then when it comes to specifically the language around disabilities, there's a lot of ways that we want to be careful in our communication here, using with a disability after person instead of putting that indicator before the word is the more compassionate way to speak about it, right? They're still a person, right? It's not that they're just a disabled person, it's that they're a person, but they happen to have a disability. I actually got called out for the next one. I was saying something in a meeting about crazy people, and someone slacked me afterwards and said, I know you didn't mean it this way, but it came across a little bit hurtful towards folks that might actually have mental illness on our teams. And I was incredibly grateful that person spoke up. And so I really tried to switch this word in a lot of ways to say, you know, instead of saying, oh, that's so crazy, or what a crazy thing, I say, well, man, that was wild. That's, my kids say it now too. So little things, but they're really meaningful. I know I say, Robin, I seriously say it all the time, and it's had to be an active change. But I think what was important in that instance is talking about someone's health, their mental health as crazy is really inconsiderate. You know, saying that like that roller coaster ride was crazy is probably still there. But again, striving for inclusive language whenever possible. I have a friend who is vision impaired, and she said she's pretty sensitive about when people make comments about how they're so blind. And again, let's just be clear. It's not that you're blind, you just didn't see that thing, right? So just a few examples of how we can strive for inclusive language. I'll try and speed through these last three because like I said, I do want to get to practice. One of my favorite things to do in written communication is to let it sit. So if I write a draft, if I write a text, whether it's waiting 10 seconds or waiting a day, letting it sit helps me make sure that I communicated it the right way. Try and self-edit wherever possible, right? Don't just hit enter because you're mad about something. Recognize the emotion yourself, pause, say, how is this actually going to come across? Now, that might be harder in meetings. Something I've had to do for myself is to just slow down my talking. I grew up in California, and I don't know what it is. Like maybe it's that I have 6 sisters. There's something that I just rush through my communication. But if I really want to get it right, I have to remind myself to pause, to go slower, even when I'm talking. I've also practiced with friends when it comes to speaking. I had a chance where there was a promotion on the table. I asked for it. I knew I wasn't first in line for it, but I thought I deserved it. So I literally wrote out my bullets, called my sister, and practiced giving my speech to her on the phone. And she gave me such great feedback. So practice is huge. Let it sit. Practice, practice, practice. Make sure your language is clear and concise, and that it's not just driven by emotion, but that it is truly authentic to the experience. A few editing tips. I won't go through all of these, but truly my biggest advice is when in doubt, cut it out. If you have too much text on the page, find places to get rid of some. If you're saying, I feel frustrated and angry, just say I feel frustrated, right? Just check yourself to make sure that it's clear as possible, and then opens up space for the listening to happen as well. Robin, was there something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about the last thing that you said about giving yourself a little time and space, especially when you're dealing with something that might be a little bit more emotional. So this is a tip that I have learned through bad experience of my own. But and I was going to say, when someone sends you an email, that's crazy, which now I will say what my daughter would say, which is unhinged. Can I say unhinged? I have had people send me emails that are really unhinged. Like I can tell that when they look back at that email the next day, they will regret what they sent. And so instead of replying at all, I just don't, right? So if someone sends me an email or a text or some kind of written communication that I can tell was sent in a moment of frustration, anger, whatever, instead of replying, and usually what has happened almost every time is that they will write me another email again within the next 6 hours or the next day, apologizing. And that way I never got into it and said, how could you say that? Whatever. And so just letting people, if people are inappropriate, just let it go, unless it really calls for a response. And in that case, keep it as short, as unemotional as possible, to again let them sit with the issue instead of you escalating it to go at a lot higher. So that's something that's worked for me, and I didn't learn it for a long time. Like I would get in and defend myself and justify and all this other stuff when it didn't need to. I didn't have anything that I needed to defend. I just needed to let them cool off and approach it differently. So that helped me a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much, Robin. And speaking of email, we'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about formats. But if they're not asking you for a response, if they're not saying, I need you to address this right away, or we have to get this out by end of day, so I need your cooperation. Like if there's not a timeline in there, then you're under no obligation to reply that same day, right? So like Robin said, give yourself the time, give them the time to cool off. There's nothing wrong with coming back to that email first thing in the morning. And if it does at that point warrant a response, keep it short, to the point. I often find in those escalating situations, truly the best strategy is to get face to face, because that helps you to understand clearer. Thank you. Yeah, I won't speak to any more of these editing tips, but just some things that have been really meaningful for me, little tiny things that you can change. I guess the last one I will say, because if there's so much, I feel like, on social media about how girls always use exclamation points, and I shouldn't even use that word girls, right? But as women, we tend to be like more effervescent in our email writing. And listen, if that's who you are, that's okay. Like make sure your language is concise. But if you're really excited about this job interview and this person who just contacted you, don't change that exclamation point to a period just because you want to sound more like a man. So here's my second TikTok that is mostly a joke, but but kind of funny.
Let me make this clear. I'm not difficult. I'm just about my business. I'm not into fake industry parties and fake agendas. Rock with people for how they make me. Let me make this clear. I'm not.
I'll play it again.
I'm just about my business. I'm not into fake industry parties and fake agendas. Rock with people for how they make me. Let me make this
I think
clear.
my favorite part about that is at the end, she just signs off, I am the best. You know, like just finishes by saying, I am the best. And then the send for my iPhone cracks me up too. So don't go to that extreme. That's the lesson here, is like, be yourself, edit for clarity and conciseness, but don't take all your personality out of it. People really, you know, workplaces need more. I think we're mostly women here, but need more people like you. So let yourself, you know, be real and authentic in those emails. Fourth high level strategy here, talk like a human. Dilbert was the original comic to make fun of terrible corporate jargon. In fact, I'll share with you one of my favorite tools for this, the corporate BS generator. It's a major time waster, but it illustrates how easily we just generate BS to efficiently simplify seamless imperatives. What does that mean, right? That's not helpful. What's another one? To energistically maximize flexible ROI. This is not clarity. This is trying to use corporate jargon to make ourselves sound smarter, or again, to just kind of be inauthentic. And I do not recommend this. So what I would say is speak to a human like they're a human, right? Don't speak to them like they're a machine or this corporate BS generator. Oh, Hemingway editor wants to save my stuff. So the key here, the tool to use is just ask, what do I really mean? So if you're looking at jargon, for example, here, and you're saying, oh, I just use the word utilize. What am I trying to say? I just mean use, right? So just say use. In fact, that's kind of one of my pet peeves. If you find utilize anywhere in your work and you're not like in construction or something, like, please take it out. So ask, what do I mean? Rewrite it until it's incredibly clear. Don't try to sound smart. Those are those big words I just showed you. Also, acronyms are really common. This was something that took me a long time to even catch up on when I transitioned into tech, because people are saying things like ROI or the, you know, SDRs or whatever. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. So let's lead from a place of clarity and kindness. And if we use those terms and say you're giving a presentation on how can we maximize ROI for this campaign, then just say, sorry, Trina, not trying to call you out on the word utilize. But yeah, if you're going to use that acronym, then just explain it afterwards, because there might be somebody in the room who hasn't heard that before, and you would want someone to explain it to you. I will add on that too, just a side note, Google is your friend. I can't tell you how many times I have Googled acronyms sitting in a meeting, right? Like that, maybe that's vulnerable for me to admit, but it's better for you to understand what they're saying if they're not going to clarify. So just straight up Google it, and then you both have clarity and compassion, right? So explain it as if you were explaining something to your grandma, right? Or to an 8th grade reading level. Like, you never know where people are coming from. Maybe English is their second language. Avoid phrases like there's one here on the same page that they might not know what they mean, but if you just say, hey, I agree with you on that, that's clear, right? Talking like humans. I'll speak more to thank you, not sorry in a minute, but really, I truly believe, be yourself. Use language that saying work together is not less intelligent than synergize, right? Saying an expert, again, not less intelligent than a thought leader. Saying the things that we do best, it's just clear. So try and talk like a human, whether you're sending an email to a recruiter, whether you're reaching out to a client, whether you're posting on LinkedIn. Don't try and sound like somebody other than who you are. The last thing about thank you, not sorry is has literally changed the way that I view the world, not only the way that I communicate. But this tweet from Adam Grant says that sorry for the slow reply is a symptom of unrealistic demands in an always-on culture. If you didn't commit to a response deadline, like we mentioned in the email, stop apologizing, drop the guilt, you're not late. A healthier message is gratitude for reasonable expectations, like thank you for your patience. I have tried to change this when I come into into meetings. Sorry, I just saw Caitlin's comment on thought leader. Yeah, it's a confusing term. Let's just be clear. But yeah, when I come into meetings, if I'm a minute late, I say, thank you for waiting for me, not, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I was 1 minute late, because the truth is we're all human beings. So let's just normalize being humans at work. Again, this has just helped me live with more of an attitude of gratitude in every circumstance that I have. It's not just a change in the words that I use. It's a change in the way that I approach things. He said, you're not late, right? You're not to blame. You don't need to be constantly beating yourself up. Just say thank you and really acknowledge that gratitude. And finally, design matters. I'm not a designer, so I only put one slide on this, but never use Comic Sans or Papyrus. Let's just get that out of the way, right? Those are dead. They died with Windows 98. So let's just leave them back there. White space is really meaningful in written communication. So an example here of 2 LinkedIn posts, which one are you more likely to read? I'm more likely to read the one with white space. Regardless of the content in these pieces, one is more appealing to the eye than the other. So use white space in your emails, use white space on social media, on your resumes. Emojis, we could have a whole discussion about that. Again, in this case, they're authentic, they're fun. When should you not send one? Maybe not when you're like trying to get your client to sign a contract, a legal contract, probably not then. But can you send one to your boss? Like, hey, can I take DTO palm tree emoji? Sure, why not? You know, like it's totally fine to have a little fun. And then Canva is my absolute favorite recommendation for designing things. I will, well, actually, I'm just going to share it now so that y'all can see. But when it comes to like resumes, this is a little embarrassing that I'm sharing my resume with y'all. I'll probably delete this slide later, but they're the same thing. And I literally just put one in Canva, and I can't tell you how many more responses I got to submitting the colorful resume. There's something about presentation that means a lot to people. And so when I say design matters, you don't have to be a designer, but think about, cheesy example, but think about you're going on a date with someone, they show up, their hair's washed, their shoes are clean, you know, like they're wearing a shirt that is not wrinkled, right? It sends the message that they care about the date. They're invested in getting to know you and being there with you. So if you're doing a presentation, take a few minutes to make it look a little bit nicer, to use the same fonts and colors. You know, if you're sending off a resume, right? Just take a few minutes to think about the way that it looks, and that doesn't make up for lack of quality, but it does send the first impression that you care, and that helps your audience to be more engaged. We're gonna switch to channel strategies there, but I do want to make sure I give a chance for Robin or Trina or anyone else to add any thoughts what we've discussed so far. Anything y'all want to add?
So far, I'm over the moon. I love everything that you're talking about. Like, I mean, and I've got some specific ideas of stuff that I wanted you to talk about, but most of the stuff you talked about, I wasn't even thinking of. And it's so amazing. I'm learning so much, and I know all of us are. So far I'm saying full speed ahead. It's incredible.
Thank you, Robin. Is she not the best hype woman? Like, you're awesome. And then I wanted to address Sarah's question too. Love the look of your resume, but I've heard that columns on resumes can be problematic with ATS systems. Good question. I don't actually know for sure about, y'all are probably more technically oriented than I am. So I don't know, Sarah, if you want to expand on that, or if anyone has thoughts on columns with ATS systems on resumes.
Yeah, so sorry, I have my kids here, so they're being a little bit noisy. But I've heard, I'm sorry. I've just heard that it's problematic to have the columns because when they go through these automatic readers, they can be all jumbled. The information can get scrambled, and so it can look disorganized.
Yeah, appreciate that call out, Sarah. It looks like Caitlin says that the ATS systems do just store the resumes, so actual recruiters will typically still read them. I'll say from a hiring manager perspective, I always look at the resume they sent in, like typically PDF, because I know that if you pull it into an ATS system or into a Word doc or wherever, that the formatting might look different. So I tend to still look at whatever they sent over. Great call out though. Okay, we're going to jump into some examples. I'm going to share this doc one more time in the Slack, and looking at this list, if you wouldn't mind just jumping into the chat really quickly and letting me know which area you want to learn more about, which one you want to focus on. Let's start there. We've still got about half an hour, so let's actually workshop this. I really truly believe that you learn by doing, and especially in communication, that practice is huge. So drop in the chat, which one do you want to talk about first? Meeting, emails, Slack, presentations, LinkedIn, or resumes? Robin votes for meetings. She's swaying the vote over here. Meetings, and resumes. Others that y'all want to touch on? Client emails. Okay. Meetings and email. Okay, let's start at the top then. And let's start with meetings and emails. We can probably skip 3 and 4 and go to the resume. So I don't have a meeting example in this doc because it's kind of hard to like have a written piece for a meeting example, but we will use that email piece coming up next. So just make sure you make a copy of this so that you can do your own edits. I'll share a few pieces of advice around meetings. So first, I thought this tweet was very appropriate for any of you who are at this stage in your career that you want to be in the meeting, you want to run the meeting, and now I am firmly at the point where I just want to avoid the meeting. So truly, my first piece of advice for meetings is question whether or not it should exist. Especially like whether or not you're leading the meeting, if you're attending the meeting, like let's acknowledge some sense of balance that is needed and ask whether or not a meeting is truly the appropriate forum to have this discussion. If it's a brainstorm, yes, that could be a great place to have a meeting, right? Especially if it's a complex issue. But if it's not a complex issue, if it could just be a back and forth between email or DM, then let's just, again, shorten the communication thread, make it clear, and cut it down. If we expect a lot of back and forth questions for like an announcement and there's an imminent deadline, then yes, have a meeting. If not, you could write a memo instead, right? Or you could write an email instead of calling a meeting with somebody who might not have as much time on their calendar as you do. So that's my first piece of advice. Ask whether or not it needs to be a meeting. And then second, if you're running the meeting, always send an agenda in advance. If you are not running the meeting, then read the agenda or ask for an agenda. This is one of the biggest game changers that I've seen in my company. If there's not an agenda sent out, then anyone on any team at any level can ask for an agenda. And this helps the meeting to be more productive throughout and helps you to come prepared to the meeting. Now, one of my pieces of advice, Robin mentioned that I love working with male allies. One of my pieces of advice to male allies is to include more female voices in meetings. And one of the ways that they can do this is either by cold calling or approaching a woman in advance, letting them know the question and giving that person the time to prepare the answer. As we mentioned earlier, sometimes having a little bit of forethought before you just speak up and give your answer can help you to not come off as too emotional about the thought, and to also really drill down on what it is you want to say. So you're not speaking around the idea, but you are just sharing the idea. Yeah, as Robin mentioned, this also benefits introverts, right? So again, that's a piece for male allies and for anyone really, like let's help out the introverts in the room. And at the beginning of the meeting, if you're leading it, let's restate the purpose. Okay, so like there's always, I feel like there's nothing wrong with like a little bit of chit chat at the beginning, but when it's time to start, then you clearly start the meeting. I'll call out Robin here. She did a great job today. As soon as I pressed record, Robin was into the intro, giving the announcements, like jumping into the bio.
It was because I didn't want to have to edit the video before I put it on YouTube. So that was the practical and lazy reason that I started right away, but good point.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great example though. I noticed when one of my coworkers did this, and she wasn't a boss, she was just one of my peers. And I noticed that anytime I had a meeting with her, she would always start off and say, the purpose of this meeting is X. And that helped everyone in the room to be aligned on what we were doing. Again, maybe there was some chit chat beforehand, but now we know what we're talking about. We know what the purpose is, and we're aligned towards the same thing. And then speaking towards some next steps can be incredibly valuable here too. So you can allude to that at the beginning of the meeting. I'll show an example, or towards the end, but it's really, really critical that you end meetings with clear next steps, because otherwise work is going to get missed and not done. Again, regardless of whether you're leading the meeting or not, you can be the person to raise your hand and say, what are we going to do next? Or what are some of our next steps here? And I can tell you the people who do that always stand out to me as the leaders in my organization, both as communication leaders and leaders on the team, because they are committed to doing the next thing based off of this meeting. So a little example here. I don't know if any of y'all have been to a meeting that starts like this, but in the original, Priya says, hey, everyone, I have the worst headache today, so I didn't really prep for this meeting. Let's just pause there. What do you think of when you hear that at the start of a meeting? You can throw it in the chat or you can unmute. What does the original one make you think of? Why am I here? Yes, Robin, why am I here? This is going to be a waste of time. What else?
Makes me where is she going to call on me to fill up time since she didn't prepare?
Oh, I love that. Was that Caitlin? I think so. Sorry, the Zoom.
Sorry,
I can only
yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. Yeah, so is she going to call on me, right? Am I going to get put on the spot? Natalie says, uh-oh, Stephanie, why am I wasting time in this meeting, right? If you start out any meeting like this, or let's also just say any kind of speaking event or presentation by saying, oh, I got this assignment last minute, or, oh, I just heard I have to speak about this, this morning, or I just started working on it this morning. Like that sends a message again that you didn't care enough to put in the time, right? To look good, to sound good, to practice, and that the people there, you are planning to waste their time, essentially. So terrible way to start a meeting. Let's just talk about what you're thinking. Again, not a clear purpose, just like, oh, let's talk about this. Our first proposal is due in 2 days. So we have a timeline, but that's a stressful timeline, right? We need clearer action items at this point. And then there's an integration in this meeting. Sales and brands teams don't know each other. So rather than giving any kind of opportunity to get to know each other or know who Priya even is, we're just jumping into kind of this mismatched brainstorm. Stronger example. Again, would love to know what you notice about this example, what stands out to you. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm Priya, VP of Marketing, and the purpose of today's meeting is to get aligned on the strategy and deliverables behind our Black Friday campaign. I sent out the agenda in advance, but as a reminder, we'll start by talking about 1, 2, 3, 4. At the end of the meeting, each of you will have a clear understanding of which tasks you own, what those tasks are, and the timeline for completing them. We'll track the progress in Asana. Any questions before we get started? So what's your gut reaction? What do you notice about that start to the meeting? Thumbs up from Robin. Again, you can chat or unmute. We're a pretty small group. It'll be productive. Yeah, Natalie, the stronger example relieves a lot of stress. Yeah, we're coming in, we're leading from a tone of confidence. And I think I've got this example later on the emails about tone, but setting the tone and the expectations in advance is really important. So if this meeting is intended to be optimistic and tactical, then let's set it up that way. Clear expectations. Love it when a plan comes together. Absolutely. Yeah, great. Good. Robin, I know you had some thoughts on meetings too. Anything that you would add to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what I was talking about before in terms of the difference between talking to your boss and hanging out and talking to your friends. And I agree with you 100%, Rachel, that I do want us to be authentic. I do want us to be our real selves. And I guess it was more like discussing the idea of reading the room and understanding when it is the right time to chit chat and be saying like, oh, what did you do this weekend? Kind of waiting for people to get on when you're in a Zoom before everybody's there. And then the adjustment that you make when it's time to get down to business and be there in the meeting. So I still want us to be our authentic selves, but recognize that there's a time and place for certain types of communications, even with our friends, right? And so understanding when you're in a room to say, this is a time to be casual, and then this is the time to really get in and be focused, and the time for kind of messing around for other stuff is over.
Yes, I love that so much. And again, it comes from that idea that clarity is kindness. If you're setting true expectations for how we're spending time, the expectation might be set that at the beginning of meetings, we open up time for chit chat. When I jumped on this call, Robin said we start at 12:03. That set a very clear expectation for me that prior to 12:03, I could chat with a few of you. I could review my slides if I needed to. But at 12:03, the meeting started, it changes. So again, Robin just coming in as our mentor text for meetings.
You know what, Rachel, can I throw one more thing in there? I loved your idea about sending out the agenda if you're the leader, but asking for an agenda if you're not the leader. And the note that I was making about introverts there, I read a lot about introverts and how they have such amazing ideas, all these other things, but they don't, like, I'm an extrovert. I come up with my ideas by talking about them. And so I talk quickly, I can think on my feet and things like that. But if you know that that's not the way it works, and if you're going to be in a meeting and need to come up with an idea and it's going to take you a little time, ask for that agenda. Come up with some thoughts ahead of time. So when it is time to ask for those ideas, you're ready to go to share yours quickly and succinctly and to have an idea that's formulated already so that you're able to really contribute rather than just kind of talking through things if that's not your strength. So I love that idea of asking for an agenda, even if one hasn't been set.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Let's move on to emails for sake of time, but really appreciate the thoughts both in the chat and out loud. Yeah, I'll go ahead and share this really silly video with you. And I apologize, there's a little bit of language, so if you don't mind, but it just captures the idea that email is inherently passive aggressive. So we do have to think about the way that we phrase things. So yeah, here we'll start.
Hi. Thank you so much. That sounds great. Exclamation point. Period. Like, dude, we treated this way. I will circle back when I have more info. Circle back. Never going to hear from you again. Let me know if you have any more questions. Oh, so you think I'm an idiot? Okay. Hope you're well. You know I'm not. You bitch. Hi.
Okay.
Hi.
So really silly example. But again, emails are inherently a bit passive aggressive. Even when we don't write them that way, that's how they come across. So what I'd love for you guys to do, you can use this as a reference, but if you'll jump into this doc now and just start with that email example, make a copy for yourself. You can change it to suggesting so that we can see some of your edits. I'd love for you, based off of our conversation today, to take a stab at rewriting this email. So changing some things that you'd want to. For me, first thing that I would do, this how do you do feels kind of unnecessary. Like, let's just get to the point. How do you do? We don't know each other. What are we talking about? So that's one thing that I would do. I'll give you till 12:48, 12:49. You can turn off your camera if you'd like to while you're working on this, and then we're going to share. Okay. I answered in the chat, but when you open it up, just go to File, make a copy, and then you should be able to edit it. Thanks. All right. We'll share a few of the things that we changed. Looks like we've already got one in the chat, and then I'll turn it over to you. Liked Natalie's suggestion. I'm privileged to be an ardent fan of your music streaming services for several years now. Is very long. Yeah, a bit wordy, right? I would probably just change it to I'm a fan, right? I'm a fan of your music. Robin, you said too formal. What makes it too formal?
Well, just the word choice, the ardent fan, privilege, things like that. And even the beginning, how do you do it? Like I send so many emails like, hey there, like that's how I start so many emails because and that's again, being authentic. I am so casual myself that I just have to be who I am. I would never say not in a million years.
Yeah, exactly the same. I'm not sure if there's a delay on your internet or mine, so I really apologize if I talked over you, but I think that's so true, too formal. What else did you guys change?
I made bullet points and I'm emailing because I believe the partnership of our two brands can, and I was just putting the bullet points and help increase sales and expose our company so that when the reader is reading it, they can say like what my value proposition is. And they're not reading through all of through the lines. They're like hitting the bullet points.
I love that. I think that's so helpful in emails. In fact, that was in the slide deck looking at that. That's one of the things that I recommend. If you have long paragraphs, long chunks of text, bullet points is a great way to break it up and make it really easily scannable. Yeah. What else? Did nobody else make any changes? We thought it was perfect. It's not a bad example, to be fair. It's pretty short, which I like. I think there are definitely a few places where you can add some white space and cut out some fluff. Any other thoughts on this one before we move on? Okay, I'm actually going to ask you to do the same thing with the Slack message because it kind of reads like an email. So I think it would be really valuable to do the same practice there. So again, it's the next one in the doc. The example is requesting a sick day. For me, right off the bat, one of the things that I notice is like this. Why are we sending it in 5 different messages? Like what a major pet peeve for me. So that's one of the things that I would change, especially if it's a Slack. Let's condense it to one message that's about 3 lines long, right? Okay, take about 2 minutes on this one since it's shorter. We'll come back at 12:54. All right, let's hear what changes you made, or if you didn't make changes, let's hear what things were kind of turn-offs in this Slack message. What did you guys notice? Robin says TMI for sure. Yeah, this is a really good example of TMI. I was up all night vomiting and feeling just miserable. Even looking at Slack is making me dizzy. Right? Like your boss doesn't want to know that. They don't need to know that. You can just say I'm sick, right? A lot of apologizing. Yeah, right? You have sick days as part of your benefit package. So you don't need to apologize for taking them. Yeah, unnecessary to ask, how are you? I don't know if any of you guys ever get messages like that, but it starts out like, hey, Rachel, how are you? And I have a coworker who used to do this, and I always knew an ask was coming afterwards. And I'm like, don't ask me how I'm doing. Just tell me what you need, right? Robin, I woke up sick. Sorry, we'll have to reschedule our meeting. I'll message you later today and find a time that works. Thank you for understanding. Bingo. Perfect, short, to the point. Hi, Sarah. I got sick in the night and I'm not able to make it to our meeting today. I'm sorry for the short notice. I need to request a PTO day. Can we reschedule our one-on-one? Brilliant. Short, to the point, totally appropriate for a Slack or a text message. I did the same thing where I basically just rewrote it. Hi, Sarah. Want to let you know I'm planning to take a sick day today. I've just submitted a PTO request and we'll check in via Slack and email. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay. So again, your boss doesn't need the gory details. Let's just keep it straight and to the point and move on from there. Love it. Anything else we didn't hit? I will say on the point of over apologizing, when they say like, whatever is easiest for you really is not true. That's not what you mean, right? So asking that question, what do you really mean? What you mean is you don't feel well and you need a sick day. So I think I included this in one of the later slides about phrases to cut, but let's just eliminate, if not no worries, from our vocabulary, okay? Because that's not what we mean, right? What we want is to have a partner meeting with that client, or what we want and what we need is to take a sick day. So let's just be clear about what we want and what we need, and let's not add the qualifiers, right? Let's be more confident. Going back to the slide, some of these things I shared already, found this data really interesting that really 100 words is about the sweet spot for an email. So check your word count in that self-edit. And if it's longer than that, it's less likely to be read or replied to. Again, white space is your friend. We've talked about that a lot. I liked Dell's example to use bullet points, and you can also just bold the main idea. So whatever you're asking for, make that really clear, maybe make that its own line. We probably won't talk through all of these tones, but I think it's helpful to see the examples here. So feel free to read through these on your own time. I'll make sure Robin has the slides as well. On Slack or text, sure, this one makes me laugh, so I'll share it with you.
That if I don't text you back, it's not because I'm mad at you or I'm ignoring you. It's because I am deeply overwhelmed. I
don't know if any of you are like that, but if I haven't texted someone back, it is not personal in the least. It is just because I have a lot of other things going on. So let's also be generous in the way we receive communication from others. And maybe I'll just give you this personal tip. If you can't text back right away, especially if it is a professional communication, let them know, right? You can say, hey, I'm at school pickup right now, so I won't be able to respond for an hour, but I've read your text, right? Or, hey, I can't respond right now. I'm heads down in a project, but this is really important to me, so I'll answer you end of day. Again, giving those clear expectations, setting up the standard there. We'll move on. I think we've got only a few minutes left, and we wanted to talk about LinkedIn. There's some jokes around LinkedIn and what it really is, but I am fully guilty. I spend a lot of time talking on there. This just cracks me up. Yesterday, I was walking to an interview. There was a starving dog on the road. I stopped to feed him and missed the interview. The next day, I got a call asking to come in to do the interview. I was surprised, but I went. Then the interviewer came in. He was the dog. So it's just like, it's funny because it's so real. Like sometimes we're a little pedantic. Sometimes we're trying to create stories where there aren't some from LinkedIn. So my biggest advice, these are a few just little like writing tips, but really just, again, be yourself. Don't try and tell someone's story that isn't your own. Tell your own story, highlight your own skills, talk about the things that you know, and then your LinkedIn communication will become more valuable. Talking about resumes, I would recommend like actually referencing a true career coach. And I have a few that I can recommend who I know pretty well, who produce a ton of free content. But I did want to share a few of my tips for resume. The number one thing as a hiring manager that I am looking for is numbers. If there are not numbers on a resume, then odds are I'm going to pass it by. So I included my example, which is not a good one. I need to do this better, but I did add this at some point, you know, like you can see in that one, increasing organic traffic 191% year over year. Okay. That's a piece of data that I always have people asking about when I do interviews. So these should be like in every role, you should have some kind of data. Now, maybe your role was like an intern role, right? So what did you do? What did you produce? I created 20 blog posts over the 2 months that I interned at this company. That kind of number is really valuable. I mentioned just like add color. We're in the digital age. You don't need to print it out. So like give it, like make it stand out a little bit more. I think that's really meaningful. And then wherever possible, make sure that you're customizing for the job. We already practiced a bit, but you can do those other practices on that doc, send them my way, and I'm happy to give you some feedback. But truly, the message I want to leave with you is that if you communicate clearly, you will build more trust. So the more detailed, the more clarity you have in your communication, the more authenticity that you have makes you a reliable employee or leader. And this makes people want to work with you and trust you. So that's what I want to leave you guys with. Thank you so much for participating in a few of those things.
Rachel, this was amazing. Oh, I'm frozen on my own video. Sorry about this. I wondered if you could give like one word of encouragement for any of these tech moms who are going to be giving their presentations in the next couple of weeks. A lot of them are feeling nervous. They haven't done this in a long time. If you've got a word of encouragement for presentations, just really quickly.
Yes. Yeah, I would be happy to. There is a section on presentations in there. It's short because again, it's a kind of another one I think you have to see in practice. But as far as the design itself, please keep your slides short. On that worksheet, you'll see the example of, you know, a kind of presentation, which the quality of the data there is so good, but no one is going to be able to read that. So pull out your like 2 to 3 big points and use those on your slide, and then know your stuff. Practice it, memorize it so that you can speak to the points on there and add color around them without relying and being dependent on your slides. That's probably the biggest advice that I can give. Your slides are not your framework. They are for your audience. They're not for you. They're for your audience. So you should know your stuff frontwards and backwards, and then just let that be an addition to what you're sharing. So including only the necessary information, using image and color and design to make it really stand out and grab your audience's attention. And then practice.
Perfect. I'm going to leave my video off because I'm frozen anyway. But anyway, I just want to say thank you so much, Rachel. This was amazing. I know that everybody got a lot out of this, and we're thrilled to have you. You've been such a great supporter for Tech Moms. Everybody, I encourage you to reach out to Rachel, follow her on LinkedIn. I put a note in the chat. If you want to read examples of outstanding LinkedIn posts, follow her and see what she's doing. She can be that mentor text for you. And thanks for joining us, everybody. And we will catch you next week. Thanks.
Thank you, Robin. Bye, y'all.
All right, you can go ahead and stop the recording.